So, I've been doing a lot of thinking lately, and thought I'd share a few thoughts today. We we've been trying to share information as we go along, little tidbits here and there, stories and experiences. I can go back to when I was a school kid, and I loved history. I loved science, but my mathematics skills were dismal. All the way through middle school, elementary school, middle school, high school, I never was the best at mathematics. I didn't wrap my head around it because I didn't see the point for whatever reason at the time. And then years and years later, I guess it was 1997, somewhere in there, my dad got me involved interested in reloading my own ammunition. I will go out right now and say that if you are not a stickler to details and you are not willing to abide by certain rules, if you're a rebel and think that you can do anything you want because you're you, reloading's not for you. Okay, not if you expect to live to be of any age at all. You win stupid prizes when you play stupid games. That's all I'm going to say about that. But I wanted to share some things. One question that came to my mind last night when I was contemplating putting this up is everybody's got their favorite thing, whether it be what brand of truck you drive, what brand of jelly you buy, what store you do your grocery shopping in general, what caliber of pistol we want to carry, if we carry one daily, what caliber of rifle we want to hunt with for deer hunting, or what shotgun or gauge or load we asked ourselves that we want to turkey hunt with. Everybody's got their favorites, and I get it. That's what makes the world go around. We all have our own tastes and interests and different opinions. But I got to thinking about things last night on the side of handgun hunting, or hunting cartridges in general. This is mainly going to deal with handguns. What you need to ask yourself is, what am I going to use it for? What am I going to expect out of it? And what am I willing to put into it? That third question is more geared toward the training and the reloading side as well. I've got an assortment here on a board out in front of me that we're going to go through, and I'm going to point out a couple of things, and then we're going to talk about a little bit of math, and it'll probably get really boring for the majority, but I want you to understand how a lot of times market and hype is very misleading, and a lot of the things that we read in gun magazines is highly misleading as well, because they get their income from selling ads for sponsors, and if it sells and makes money, if it doesn't work, that's secondary, because as we all know, in the world today, profits are king. So what we're going to do here is take a look at some things, and we've got a selection here, and there's a couple of stories to go with it. But this right here, this little goomer on the end, is a 9mm Parabellum, 9x19, 9mm Luger, however you want to call it by whichever name it's popular as. This is a 124 grain SIG V-Crown load. Pretty decent performance in a carry gun, whether it be a compact or a full-size semi-auto. I haven't shot any of these out of any of the 9mm revolvers that happen to be out there. There are a few of those. But out of my duty size M&P, it performs pretty well for what it is and what it's intended for. This is our probably our most popular carry gun round in the United States. For whatever reason, a lot of people are more, they like a 40 or a 45 ACP, 40 Smith & Wesson or a 45 ACP, and the semi-auto a little more, due to the power factor and the bullet weights and penetration, etc. But as a carry loading a 9mm, this isn't too bad at all. Good expansion. You can see it's got the dual cavity hollow point, if it'll focus there. And I've shot them into all kinds of different mediums, and they do fairly well. But this is mainly a carry. I've heard people say, well, I killed a deer with a 9mm pistol. Well, I've killed deer with a whole lot smaller, but I wouldn't advise it if you're a novice and if you're not sure that everything's just so and perfect. Anything's possible once or twice. I've killed them with 40s, I've killed them with 45s, I've killed them with all kinds of different things, some I won't admit to, but I digress. This is a step up in horsepower. It's roughly a couple thousandths larger bullet, but fairly close. We'll call it about the same diameter. This is a 357 Magnum. This is a 158 grain semi-wad cutter, plain lead bullet, flat nose. For years and years, a 357 was considered the baddest dog on the corner, and for good reason at the time. It was a step above the 38 that was in common use in police forces. You don't see it hardly anymore in law enforcement. Everybody's went to the semi-autos in various calibers, 357 SIG, 9mm, 40, 45. But at time, this was a handgun king. If you listen to the advertising, and if you read the studies on, percentages of one-shot stops and street shootings and stuff like that, whether it be law enforcement, private citizen, the 357 with a 125 grain bullet was the top rung of the self-defense ladder for years and years. And then people got to hunting with them. It is no slouch out of a carbine length rifle. I have read that it is encroaching on 30-30 territory out of a good lever action, with the right load. I'm not going to argue with that. I've never owned a 357 rifle, but I have owned 357 pistols. And I will say, without any kind of bragging, or this round, I loaded it when I had one. I loaded it with a 180 grain XTP bullet, which is only this diameter. It was a 180 grain XTP, and we were consistently hitting quarter scale targets at 175 yards out of a 6.5 inch revolver with it off of sandbags, which I'm not going to complain. It's a fast, flat shooting round, but it's slipped over the years to a point. It's not as popular as it once was because of marketing in other realms. I would probably deer hunt with one today if I had it, but we're putting this up here for size comparisons. As I've said before, I am a 45 Colt fan, so we're going to get into a couple of these. This is a 200 grain, what they call a cowboy action level load. This is the bullet that's actually in the case. This is what it looks like out of the mold. I cast my own bullets and load them myself, because if you go to our local Cabela's in this region and buy a box of these loaded, 50 rounds is going to cost you about $1 a shot, about 50 bucks, last I looked. But I can cast these myself at home and load them myself here at home and get it down. Before COVID and the powder and primers went nuts, I could load these for about $3 a box, my cost, which is a horrendous savings. It's light for caliber, but it's a nice, pleasant shooting all-around load just for plinking, shooting cans or whatever. This is the same caliber round, 45 Colt. This is a 250 grain Hornady XTP hollow point bullet. Most people would say that's what they would deer hunt with if they were using this round. It's a copper jacketed expanding bullet. You can see the skives on the mouth of the case here all the way around. There's 6 of them, and it makes the classic, or supposed to make the classic mushroom on contact with game or adversaries or whatever you're using it for. I don't use them. I've got a few of these at the house that I came by, but to me, shooting a jacketed bullet out of a 45 Colt is heresy, and I just don't do it. This next load here is a 310 grain. Well, let me back up. This is a 310 grain. Hard cast, water quenched from wheel weights. It is an extremely hard bullet for what it is. This is a Lee 300 grain mold. It's got the dual crimp groove here. You can see I'm using the rear one. This is what this bullet looks like straight out of the mold after being sized. It's got a couple of light smears on it from the sizer dye, uniforming them. This is a gas check design. It's got a gas check. It's a copper disc that goes on the base of the bullet where you see this rebated section down here. It's where it fits on, and it's crimped on as you size them. The last load I was using these in did not have enough velocity to warrant the gas check, and I had no issue shooting them without them. Some of these other ones I've been working on, they are required. I took this bullet and I modified it some. I devised a jig. I'm not going to go into details. I may have to market it one day to eat. Don't know. But this is the 300 grain Lee bullet that's dropping out of my mold at 308.8 grains. So we're going to call it a 310. I took the same bullet, and as you can see here, I put a cavity in the nose of it. It's a little bigger than a 1/4 inch. It 17/64, I think, was the drill bit. Don't ask me how it came by that particular size. It was just the way things fell together while I was devising this combobulation. But I drilled it just as deep as it is wide, so it's we'll call it a square cavity. I don't know if that'll focus enough to see down in there or not, but it's a lot bigger than the cavity in the XTP here. We're gonna get him out of the way. We're not interested in those old fuddy-duddy modern rounds. I shot a deer with this some years back. It was a close shot. It was about 15 steps. This is the actual bullet that I recovered from that deer. You can see the base is the same, the grease groove's the same. It stopped expanding just below the drilled cavity I'd mentioned. That deer was about 15 decent steps away, 15 long steps. And I hit him square in the brisket. I recovered this bullet under the hide on his left ham, over 3 feet of penetration after expending the front portion of the bullet in the chest cavity. And he went down like somebody hit him under the chin with a ball bat, like King Kong did. He simply just flipped over backwards, kicked his one good leg a couple times, and expired. He never got up, never thrashed, never tried to run. He just flipped over backwards, kicked twice with one leg, and lay there. That was it. That load was running about 1,080 feet per second out of my pistol, and it worked, and it worked spectacularly well. It was not a 357 Magnum running 1,400 feet per second. It was running 1,080, like I said. And I've got loads that are hotter than that out of a 45 pistol. That was using blue dot powder, and it was fairly conservative for what it was, but it worked nonetheless. And I got all but, if it had been a solid bullet like this, ain't no doubt in my mind it would have exited that deer's hind end. But it went in the brisket. It completely obliterated the heart and lungs, exited the back of the rib cage and stayed under the hide, entered the rear quarter, the ham, centered the bone, broomstrawed it, and came to rest just under the hide. I thought he had a big tick on his hind end because he had a cowlick of hair sticking up, and that was where that bullet had pulled the hide away from the tissue, and just made a mess of everything start to finish. But it worked. It worked great. A friend of mine years ago
decided he wanted to load, he had a 44 Magnum, and he wanted to load it for hunting wild hogs. And he actually settled on the 44 Magnum version, the XTP bullet, and he wanted to load 300 grain bullets in his 44 Magnum to hunt hogs and to hunt whitetail with, and he wanted to load them as hot as he could possibly get them. And I told him, I was like, well, I'll teach you how to do it if you want to make the investment, but you're going to have to learn a few things. And one of those things you need to learn is safety and making, you know, reasonable loads that aren't quasi-suicidal or dangerous for you or the people around you. So we got him on the road to where he wanted to go, and I sent him to get his components, told him what to buy. I put him on H110 powder, H110 Winchester 296, one and the same. And we were going to go by the load data, the published load data, and get him there safe. And if he could tolerate them, as far as handling the gun with those loads in it, and he was happy with it, and it worked for him, then so be it. That's what he wanted, and that's what it's about. It's making yourself happy and reaching milestones and learning things. But when we got him there, it was time to go test them. And he took it was a Ruger Super Red Hawk, or Super Black Hawk rather, in 44 Magnum, the old standard everyday, what everybody carried in Alaska for years, and my dad had one for quite some time. The Ruger Super Black Hawk was one of the most popular 44 Magnums other than the Smith & Wesson Model 29 for years. The working man's gun. It didn't argue, it done it all that needed to be done. Still doing it today. But we took it down to a property I had available at the time, and we filled a 35-gallon cardboard packing drum full of sawdust the day before and soaked it in water. And he fired his beloved 44 into it, and it made it a little over halfway through this wet packed sawdust and came to rest in a big old fat mushroom, and he was tickled. And I had my pistol with me that day. I was shooting this bullet over H110 powder at the time, and it blew his mind because it penetrated. He shot a little toward the 9 o'clock on one end of the barrel, lengthways, top to bottom, and I shot a little to the 3 o'clock into the top of the barrel, top to bottom. Had it laying on its side. This bullet right here exited the end of that barrel, hit the ground, throwed a chunk of dirt out. I can't tell you where it went, how deep it went in the ground. If it came back out and whistled through the timber till it came to rest into a tree trunk or on the ground. But it blew his mind because it shot completely through what his would only shoot a little over halfway through. And I explained to him the frontal area on this one expands as it goes deeper and deeper. This one does not. Then what it is, it's just a big wide flat nose on this bullet that doesn't deform as it plows through things, and then it drives immensely deep through tissue. Actually, this flat on the nose of this bullet can cause as much tissue disruption as a hollow point design would, just from blunt force. People will argue that all day long, and that's their right, I guess, but if they want to come down, we'll prove them wrong every time. And this one over here, for comparison, size comparison, this is not a small round at all. This, I thought I needed. I really did. I was getting ready to go in debt. You can see there's no primer in it. It is a 500 line ball. This is a creation of John Lineball. He passed away back in March 23. But John was a custom pistol smith that I had conversations with, and he was more than happy to build me one of these rascals on my Bisley frame for a sizable amount of money for me. conversation, he explained to me that I didn't really need it where I lived and with the things I did, that this right here would more than suffice, and offered to prove it to me in person if I would drive down to New Braunfels, Texas for a seminar they were holding. Matter of fact, at the time, John told me he would trade out building me one of these, one of his fine custom 5-shot revolvers, and he knew that I was a working father and raising young boys and didn't really have the money to burn, and was willing to work out a deal on seasoned firewood and trade. But me being in Kentucky, John being in Cody, Wyoming, wasn't a realistic endeavor on my part. And after our conversation, he set my mind at ease and told me that my load and my pistol would do anything I needed to do in the lower 48 states, from mice to moose to bears to whatever I might encounter. So the man actually, we need more people like him in the world, because number one, he was really, really good at what he did. And a lot of people don't have any interest in being good at what they do. Being good enough and barely enough to get by is plenty, and that's sad. But he was looking past his profits, his dollars coming in, and willing to do a trade on a probably $2,500 pistol and trade out a hillbilly and firewood, you know, scratching each other's back. But I wish I could have got to know him better, and I wish I could have owned one of his products. But looking back, things happen for a reason. So I learned a lot after that conversation. So that little rascal there, that 420 grain hard cast bullet in a shortened .348 Winchester rifle case, as it was designed. I think this one was loaded. John got them. He sent me this as a sample. This and a .475 counterpart of his. This is Buffalo Bore ammunition. I guess it's where this was head stamped for their production, which, by the way, makes outstanding ammunition comparable to these. They actually make a deer grenade now. I think it's a 260 or 265 grain deer grenade, hollow point. It's a semi-wad cutter, kind of styled after this, but hollow pointed, immensely large, and loaded in 45s and 44s and other calibers. Funny thing is, when I started doing this, I had big hopes it would work out well for me personally, and it did, as you could see in the story I told about them. But I think it was 2 or 3 years after I started doing this, Buffalo Bore came out with a commercial version called a deer grenade to just kind of let the air out of my balloon, because I really thought I was a brainiac and developed something that nobody had done before. But I guess that's where being a hobby reloader and TIG welder for a living keeps you from reaching certain pinnacles in the world as somebody of some importance. But either way, it still works. Some things I learned from John and from doing other experiments and just piddling around over the years is you can take a fast, light bullet and do crazy things in ballistic gelatin, temporary stretch cavities and all this mess, and hypervelocities and splash factor, and blow exceedingly large cavities into clay blocks and scatter things over feet of your target range by driving fragile bullets extremely fast out of rifles and handguns both. I don't really see the point in blowing a great big shallow cavity in anything, because if it's mean enough, it's just going to make it mad. And a long straight bullet track tears up a whole lot more tissue as you go through a critter. They say that humans, mammalian creatures, four-legged or two-legged, are anywhere between 60 and 70-75% water, depending on what you're talking about. Humans or whales or buffalo or pigs or horses or deer or groundhogs or whatever. And I've killed deer with 22 250s because it was legal here to do so, and people told me it couldn't be done. We proved them wrong. And I've killed deer with 30 caliber center fires, and I've killed deer with 45 70s and 45 Colts and 223s. And one thing I learned early on was the lighter bullet you use, the lighter, faster bullet you use, your shot placement it becomes more critical. Shooting deer with a 22 250 is a surgical endeavor. Shooting deer with a 223 needs to be a surgical endeavor. I can take these heavy hard cast and the angle doesn't become as critical. The angle of entry and exit, people used to tell me when I started bow hunting, if you'll take and try to see through your target and imagine where your arrowhead's coming out. You want to keep it in the heart and lungs, the head of the liver, as straight as you can keep it, and envision where you're going to come out the other side. That holds true with firearms as well. But when you use a heavy for caliber bullet, and especially one that is built properly, the angle of entry doesn't become as critical as what you're intersecting along the way, because they used to be real popular phrase talking about taking a Texas heart shot on a deer, which is right under the tail in the back door and driving forward to reach the vitals. If you tried that with a 223 or a 22 250 or a 220 Swift, or even a lightweight 243 bullet, some things are going to happen you're not going to like. Number one, with a conventional coat jacketed bullet anyway, you're going to have a horrendous mess if you ever recover the animal, and that's best case. Odds are you're going to lose that animal, and it's going to die a long, slow, suffering, lingering death, which isn't fair to them or our brothers and sisters in the field, because one idiot does something stupid that makes all of us look bad. We owe it to ourselves, we owe it to the sport, we owe it to the game to have enough dignity to do things the right way. To do it in an efficient manner. No soccer mom living in the outer suburbs or a rural area wants her babies to see a suffering, crippled Bambi struggling through the yard, dragging its hindquarters or gimping along, snorting, blowing blood out its nostrils and suffering like that. If you're a person that has to go walking through people's backyards looking for the animals that you shot, then you're not doing something right. And you're doing a whole lot wrong. If it offends you, I'm sorry. I've hunted with people who thought they had to go out and buy a 300 Winchester to hunt 150-pound deer with. I may have mentioned it in a prior video, maybe last September, about a guy that shot a doe, and he shot her a frontal shot, straight on, hit low, a little big chunk out about the size of his fist, and never did find her. Just because you're shooting a cannon doesn't mean that you're going to be successful. Some of these rounds here, some people may consider it a cannon, but I'm not trying to decimate protein into a fog. I'm just trying to push through, hit all the important stuff, let a lot of air in and a lot of important fluids out and bring them down very quickly. There's many different calibers that are capable of that. I still think that bullet design is paramount. Horsepower, not so much. I won't mention who. I'm aware of one individual that was claiming how devastating a 300 Remington Ultra Magnum was, because they were loading really light 30 caliber hollow point bullets in it, varmint grade bullets, and they were driving extremely fast velocities. And that may work if you're just trying to impress yourself or impress your friends over, you know, a chronograph. I raised an argument to the one telling me that. I said, well, 300 Ultra Mag, Remington Ultra Mag, 300 rum is pretty potent medicine when it's loaded right. For a 30 caliber center fire rifle round, you know, it's pretty serious. And I said, but if I was to prove to you that I could shoot farther with a little stumpy 308 and 168 grain match bullets, you'd call me a liar. And we're like, well, yeah, I'd call you a liar. It's not nowhere near as fast. You know, that thing was, you know, it was knocking up there close to 4,000 feet per second. Bullets don't drop when they fly that fast. Well, they drop. They drop a lot. They don't have the mass to keep carrying themselves forward. They run out of steam faster than a heavier bullet will. Heavier bullet may start out slower. That's kind of like the tortoise and the hare. You know, that in a proverbial children's story. The hare may take off faster, but it doesn't have the stamina. When you launch heavy bullets at moderate velocities, they retain their energy farther. They may drop more, but the horsepower, the momentum, if you want to call it kinetic energy and try to get scientific on it, you know, would you rather be hitting the chest with a tennis ball doing 90 or a billiard ball off a pool table doing 55? I take the tennis ball every time. Bump it up a notch. You want to get hit with a basketball doing 90 miles an hour? Or would you rather get hit with a bowling ball doing 55? Either way, I mean, it's the same diameter roughly, right? You know, bowling ball, basketball, 44 Magnum, 45 Colt. When you add in the weight and you add in the durability of the bullet construction, things change dramatically. That basketball hits you in the chest. I mean, everybody remembers playing dodgeball back when it was, you know, fun and not a crime. Nobody wanted to catch that dodgeball. Nobody wanted to catch one to the gut or to the chest or to the back. But that dodgeball was fairly light, and it might have been whistling when it hit you, but it flattened out and bounced off. If somebody was throwing bowling balls instead of dodgeballs, would none of us been around long to complain about how bad it stung? That's how it works. Whether you're hunting dangerous game in Africa, I've been watching a lot of buffalo boar videos here of late, listening to Tim Sundles talk about Cape Buffalo and different various rifle calibers for the African continent. And, I watched a video here pretty recent about I think it's 475 line ball in a revolver, and he said that when he does carry one, it's usually loaded with 2 soft point expanding bullets in the cylinder coming up first, and then non-expanding solid hard cast behind it, or they're mono-metal bullets. Because if the expanding rounds fail to do their job, then you have the backup to plow on through and reach the important stuff. And it makes perfect sense. Me, I've come to the point, in whitetail, I'll hunt with cast hollow points all day. If I was going after wild hog, I would probably follow his advice on the hollow points up front and the solid hard cast behind. There's a big difference physiologically between whitetails and boar. Bone densities and hide thickness and muscle density and the way their organs are laid out. I don't hunt hogs at the present, but if I did, and you can't argue with facts. You listen to the people who have been there and done it instead of the ones that sit back talking about, well, I think. You can think all day long, but until you stood in their boots and dropped the hammer on the animals they have, then you have no right to a valid opinion. You can spout theories all day, but the proof's in the pudding. I made a comment on a video here a while back. Hype sells. Results. That's what you're looking for, is the results. You can hype anything up enough to make a sale. The proof's in the performance, and taking time to tinker safely and see what we can accomplish sanely and learn new things is what has brought me to the point where I'm at now. Not to say that I'm any great driving force in anything, just for my personal amusement, but there's not a lot of arguing with facts. I've seen deer shot with various calibers of rifle and handgun, and shoot, I've seen squirrels shot with just something as simple as different 22 long rifle loads, and some perform a great deal better than others. You can extrapolate that and come up in weight in your game animals from, say, squirrel to groundhogs to coyotes and bobcats to whitetails and boar and mule deer and elk. It doesn't take near the performance as far as horsepower and just raw horsepower to take down a whitetail or an antelope, a pronghorn antelope, than it does. It takes a little bit more steam when you get up into mule deer, and then when you jump up to elk, there's a big difference. There's a real big difference between a 150-pound animal and a 1,500-pound animal, or a 2,500-pound animal. We've all heard about people, the ones of us that are into the history of hunting and legends, and Bell back in the day over in Africa that supposedly killed X number of elephants with a 7x57 Mauser. I own a 7x57 Mauser. I would probably come closer to braining an elephant with a 45 Colt or a 475 line ball than I would a 7x57. I've killed deer with them, but that ain't what it was designed for. I'd rather have a big heavy fat chunk of lead, which even the best 45 Colt load isn't half of what most people would advise on animals that big. If it stunned it long enough for me to run, if it was an attack or something like that, maybe it's a little facetious. 45 Colt on elephant, yeah, right. But I'd probably take something up to a couple thousand pounds with one, or attempt to, if I was confident in my shot placement, my load, my bullet construction. Everybody wants to sneer at the old cowboy loads, and what I've noticed here of late is all the people my age that grew up deer hunting with a 30-30, now they just laugh at it. 30-30 ain't enough to deer hunt with. Well, multiple metric tons of meat in the freezer over the years will prove that to be a lie. I'd say there's probably been more deer killed with 22 rimfires than there have been 30-30s, and there's been a buttload killed with 30-30s. When you take into account fieldcraft and being sensible about what you're trying to set out to do, people laugh at 30-30s deer hunting anymore. The old guys don't. We know they work. One younger buck, I guess he was probably in his late 30s, early 40s, that I came across here a while back. He hunted thick timber out west, and he's a bow hunting guide, an archery guide now, bow hunting elk. He takes people out and puts them on cows and on bulls, and he's deep into the bow hunting gig now. But he was asked, when you were younger, when you first started hunting them, as a teenager and coming up, what was your elk hunting rifle? And I'm sure they were expecting to say, minimum of 7 mag or 300 or 338. And he looked them dead in the eye and he said, I killed most of mine with a 30-30 rifle, because the ranges were close, and we shot them right and they fell. You tell people you're going to go hunt elk with a 30-30 and they look at you, like you're brain dead or something. But there's been many whitetails killed with an old black powder 44-40 load or a 38-40 load, because when before the advent of the marketing hype, when people didn't get on the internet and see the latest ad, or on TV, on satellite, and see the latest and greatest marketing ad from whatever ammunition company was pushing them, then they just used what they had, and it worked, because they knew they had to make an ethical shot, and they knew that they had to take meat home so Mama and Junior or little sis didn't go hungry. I'd like to say it was a simpler time. It wasn't. You had to work your tail off to make a way, but people had more horse sense anyway, more common sense back then than they do now. It seems like every time a new caliber comes out, everybody trades off their old rifle or old pistol and wants to upgrade and be with the cool kids shooting the new shiny stuff. And I don't know. Market hype. I read an article one time that Line Ball put out, John did, and it says it pretty well. He says, if you think about a hunting handgun as being nothing more than a remote control long-range punch press, you've got this tool in your hand, you got a target out there, or right over there, and you need to put a pretty good sized hole through important parts. You think of it as a punch press. You don't think of it as a laser or a lightsaber or an atomic bomb. It's a punch press. Don't count on a bullet expanding like the hype and the marketing ad told you that it would. Don't think you're going to pull a trigger on your 44 Magnum and get an 80 caliber mushroom exiting the backside of an animal, because it doesn't work that way all the time. If everything goes perfectly right, you may get a complete penetration. You may get a beautiful picture perfect magazine photo grade mushroom bullet on the backside of the critter. But in the real world, it doesn't always work out that way. Deer aren't made of ballistic gel, and nor are criminals. Things can get in the way, things can happen, critters can move. I'll guarantee you, if you take that 9mm around there on that board and fire it in ballistic gel, or fire it through milk jugs of water, or fire it into a clay block, you're going to get a real pretty mushroom, just like SIG intended, and like their salespeople put in the pictures. But if you were using it to protect your wife and your kids while on a trip to the mall, and some ne'er-do-well in the parking lot thought your money or your car or your wife's purse or God forbid your kids were more important than their dignity, and they had a leather jacket and a couple hoodies on, or, you know, that changes things on how that bullet performs. If that deer this year has a extra thick layer of fat, or is more heavily muscled due to his diet than the one you shot last year, you know, that bullet's going to act a little different when it hits that deer this year. Everybody talks about, you know, improvements in technology. Sometimes the old stuff works better. Sometimes the old reliable standbys work better. I have noticed another trend in marketing with people pushing products, and I've used a few of them. Some are designed for a particular purpose. They're designed for shooting holes in paper and winning money. And some are designed for incapacitating bad people. Some are touted as being the best thing since sliced bread when it comes to taking down Boone and Crockett bucks or Boone and Crockett bulls, or big bears, or what have you. But sometimes the hype isn't completely explained. We'll get back to that in just a minute. All right. Where was I? Oh yeah, hype, marketing hype. People fall into a trap. An acquaintance of mine got into hunting wild hogs, and it was a sport. He wasn't doing it to protect his own crops or property or anything, but he decided he was going to start going places and hog hunting, which is cool. I mean, I'm down, you know. But it was popular at the time for everybody that was going down there hog hunting. They were going down south of here, and it seemed like everybody and their cousin that went was using an AR-15, and he was using one too. You know, multiple follow-up shots for multiple targets in a herd. And sometime prior, I had given him some ammunition that was loaded with a 55 grain varmint bullet, a soft point varmint bullet, and a 223 case. And he elected to take those on a hog hunt. It didn't work out too well. He should have known better. Fast expanding varmint bullet, hitting the hog in the side of the head. He shot one, went down and got back up squealing. He shot it again, then he shot it again, then he shot it again. Bullet construction matters. Rifling twist matters. There's a lot of people that don't stop and think. A bullet designed to perform a certain way at a certain velocity and a certain rifling twist barrel is going to act a certain way, but when you increase the spin rate, it seems to come apart a little bit faster. If you drive it faster out of a longer barrel, it seems to come apart a little bit faster and fail. So I learned about twist rate through mathematics when I was in school. Like I said at the beginning of this, I wasn't real good at math. If you get into ballistics and you get into reloading and you're not good at math, one of three things is going to happen. Either, number one, you're going to get good at math. Number two, you're going to continue to suck at math and give up on ballistics and reloading. Or number three, you're going to go clinically insane or hurt yourself in a bad way for somebody else, God forbid. If you're going to get into reloading and don't want to get good at math, then don't fire your loaded rounds around anybody else. That's all I can tell you. To give you a little bit of insight here, got my little notebook because I can't remember nothing anymore. This is in my Ruger pistol, the aforementioned blue dot load. that one in the center there that I killed that deer with was running 1,080 feet per second. And out of the rifle and twisting that pistol, which is a 1 in 16, that bullet was doing about 29,700 RPMs. The old original H110 load I started with, 1,241 feet per second, with the same 1 in 16 twist barrel. When you do the math on it, it's running about 55,000, 56,000 RPMs. Rotational velocity. And my current load is it's clocking along at over 1,300, and that bullet's turning over 161,000 RPMs rotational velocity. So you ask yourself this: when a bullet's made to come apart, to expand, to fragment, whether it be a varmint bullet that's fragmenting without putting a massive exit in the backside of a pelt, or designed to expand going through the thoracic cavity of a big game animal, or intended to be a solid homogeneous mass with a blunt nose on it to plow deep into heavier dangerous game. When you look at those RPM rates, think of it this way: we're going to step it back in speed quite a bit. If you take a Briggs & Stratton lawnmower engine and you start it up, it's going to run somewhere around 3,800 RPMs. Now if you shut it off, you get two of them sitting there, and you shut one of them off, and you take a big blunt instrument, say a sledgehammer, and you hit the top of the flywheel, it's going to break. If you start up that second one and you got it sitting there running 3,800 RPMs, and while it's running, you slam that hammerhead into that flywheel, you know what's going to happen to it? It's going to come apart very violently. Now take that times 10 or even more in speed, times 20, and when bullets are flying forward, they not only have their forward velocity, they have this rotational velocity going on too. And of course it happens in milliseconds: ignition, launch, impact. Take into account, not only bullets don't fly straight, without spinning. They have to spin to stay stable. So same principle as throwing a football. If you try to throw a football without a spin on it, it's going to start wobbling, end over end. So bullets have to be spin stabilized. The shorter the bullet, the slower the spin, slower the rifle and twist. Round balls in the muzzle loader, 1 in 70, 1 in 66, 1 in 60, that'll do it. You get into a conical bullet, one whose length is greater than their caliber, you have to increase that spin rate. So to keep it simple, the shorter the bullet for the caliber, the slower the barrel twist needs to be. The longer the bullet is, which is heavier, you're restricted to a caliber like say 45. A 200 grain bullet is shorter than a 300, which is longer than a 250. That twist rate needs to be matched to that bullet length. You have two constants in bullets, and that is diameter. Saying that it doesn't expand, you have diameter and you have weight. Velocity is a constantly diminishing variable. So as bullets fly, they slow down. That's physics. Gravity takes hold, energy peters out. The farther it goes, the slower it goes. The only constants you have is diameter and weight, mass. It's physics. Guess what? There's a lot of math and physics too. So I know, I get boring. But what we're going to do going forward, if I can, is we're going to take different calibers. If y'all are interested, let me know. Leave a comment. I'm getting a few likes, thumbs up, whatever, but I'm not getting many comments. So going forward, if y'all are interested, what I may do is take different calibers, different weight bullets, differently constructed bullets, and we'll walk them through their paces and see how they perform and try to debunk anything I've said today. If you're interested in something like that, let me know. If you're not, don't watch, because I'm probably going to do it anyway. Alright? I'm looking at ways to fill in my time and try to keep myself focused on something. And I'm interested in it. I don't know if y'all are as much, but give me some feedback, and we'll chase this rabbit as we go down this trail. Alright, we'll talk to y'all later. I got to get off here. Got to make a couple phone calls. Enjoy the rest of my day. I'll talk to y'all next time.